Go Blue. It is Michigan versus Ohio State today. I am pumped. I think everyone around the nation, even if they're not Michigan versus Ohio State fans, is pumped for this game. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to break it all down right after this. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. You are watching the Camper Report Live. We have a new guest today. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Camper Report. As you guys know, I'm a big Michigan fan. Again, they haven't beaten Ohio State in a long time, but this is a huge rivalry that has gone on for 100 years, just about a century. It's pretty crazy to see. I mean, Ohio State has beaten Michigan for the last 9 years. So this is basically, I have never actually, when I started getting into college football, which was around 2015, I have never seen Michigan beat Ohio State. Because I started getting into Michigan football when Jim Harbaugh came there, because I'm also a 49ers fan. You see the connection there. So I'm going to start off with the keys to the Michigan versus Ohio. How will Michigan beat Ohio State? Again, a guy that I was doing a show with, shout out Not Your Average Sports Kid, the other day said that this Ohio State team is probably the worst team they've had in 10 years. And I agree with them. To be honest, they've only lost one game, but this is not that. CJ Stroud's not as good as Justin Fields. This team is not. Their run game's not as good. Their defense, obviously, their defensive line does not have the type of firepower it used to with Nick Bosa and what's his name? Chase or whatever his name is. So they do not have the type of firepower they used to, but they're still a very good team. I think the one thing that Michigan, starting with the offensive side of the ball, we know that, okay, so Ohio State has 2 top 5 receivers, arguably, in college football. That is one thing. So their offense can be very explosive. They can really pull off a lot of big plays down the stretch. So that's why I feel like you have to take possession away from Ohio State. Otherwise, Ohio State is going to kill you offensively. You can't out-finesse Ohio State. You're not going to outscore them, but you can play it dirty in the trenches. I think the way Michigan wins this game is if they play it in the trenches and they run the ball a ton effectively. Ohio State's run game is not good at all this year. They're actually not. Their run game has been pretty low this year, so they're giving up a lot of yards to the run. Again, they shut down Kenneth Walker last week, but I don't care about that. Michigan is going to try to hand it to Hassan Haskins. I think that's how you win the game. If you can sustain long 7 to 8 minute drives to where Ohio State gets 1 drive per quarter, if you can sustain long 8-minute drives where you run the ball 75, 80% of the time, then you could have a great chance. But it doesn't even start with running the ball. Like, you have to run the ball effectively, which Michigan's been doing all year with Hassan Haskins. So you have to run the ball effectively. Otherwise, Ohio State will get too much time of possession. They'll be able to do explosive things on the offense. If you can limit Ohio State's offensive opportunities, then you could really have a chance here. And that's done by running the ball and taking away time of possession from the Ohio State's offense. Defensively, Ohio State's going to try to stop the edge. Again, you've got two guys on Michigan's defensive line with 10 sacks, Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo. So you've got 2 very good defensive ends on Michigan's defensive front. Ohio State's going to try to chip block them. They're going to try to send a tight end out there and just going to try to clog it. So really, it all starts with the middle. Michigan has always been known for having a good defensive tackles. I think their defensive line is going to get home. Again, this Ohio State offense, if you can keep CJ Stroud in the pocket, do not let him scramble, because that's where he's most dangerous. Keep him in the pocket, make him make him make short decisions, make him make fast decisions, and really make him be a pocket quarterback. Because if you can do that, then maybe he throws a pick here or there. All you need is 1 or 2 takeaways to really change the outcome of this game. So I think really for Ohio State, for Michigan, it all comes down with keeping CJ Stroud in the pocket, keep him patient. Sorry, keep him guessing. Also, I think the one thing you got to do is do a lot of disguised blitzes, because then you can all of a sudden you have pressure coming out of nowhere. So I think they're going to blitz quite a bit. Again, this is not as good. I keep saying to everyone, this is not as good as this Ohio State. I mean, CJ Stroud is not as good as Justin Fields. Their running game, they don't have anybody that like Trey Sermon. So the Ohio State running back that last year, that was really good. So they don't really have anybody like Trey Sermon to carry this team. So that's my keys for this game. Defensively, you gotta make him play like a pocket quarterback. Offensively, I have a lot more to say offensively, because I feel like if they can run the ball effectively, Michigan, if you can sustain long drives down the field, 7-8 minute drives down the field, play it in the trenches, then you can take time of possession away, like I said before, away from Ohio State. That will be key, because then it doesn't matter if Ohio State out-finesses you. All you have to do is take time of possession away from them, and Ohio State won't get very many opportunities. I think in the past, the reason why Michigan's gotten blown out is because they've just tried to score, and that's not their style of football. Their style of football is to run in the trenches. I think Ohio State, their style of football is to outscore you. Their offense is very explosive, but I think there is cracks in the offense. There is ways where you can shut down Ohio State's offense. The main concern that I have is Ohio State's receivers. Chris Olave and Wilson, I can't remember his first name. They're explosive. So that's why I think it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to stop the Ohio State offense. You just have to give them a few opportunities and get them maybe a few takeaways. Another thing is in the past, Michigan's defense has not shown up in big games. Their defense has crumbled. Again, a few years ago, both of these teams are playing for a college football spot. They're playing for a Big Ten spot, a spot in the Big Ten championship. Both of these teams are. But a few years ago, I think it was 2018 when Michigan was in the same spot against Ohio State. And I think it was the years when they had Devin Bush and all of those really good linebackers and stuff. The defense didn't show up. Now, that Ohio State team in 2018 had, I believe, Nick Bosa. I think it had Chase, the guy who's now for the Washington football team. That team was crazy good. But I think in the past, Michigan's defense has not showed up. I think their defense is better than it has been in the past, and that will really help Michigan in this game. If their defense can show up and maybe hold them to less than 30 points, that would be huge. But that's a big if. That's a big if, because Ohio State's offense is so explosive. So next up, I've got what's at stake for this game. Honestly, I think there's a lot at stake. Jim Harbaugh has been basically, when you get this job, a lot of people say that it's beat Ohio State. When you get this job, your one job is to beat Ohio State. I completely agree with that. So Ohio State, Jim Harbaugh is 0-5 against Ohio State. He hasn't won a single game against Ohio State. It's time to win something. I would argue if he doesn't win this game, his job could be on the line. The understanding at the beginning of this year was they gave him a 1-year extension and they said, go and beat Ohio State. And that's what he's doing. That's what he's trying to do. He's done everything right up until this point. So all you have to do is beat Ohio State. And that's the one job that he had, I believe, that he had at the beginning of the season when they gave him that 1-year extension. He's on the hot seat. If he doesn't beat Ohio State, things could get dicey. But if he wins a Big Ten championship, which Michigan has not done in his tenure, and gets a spot in the college football playoffs, now everyone will be applauding him. Because the other thing that's at stake for this game is a spot in the Big Ten championship and a spot in the playoffs. You could argue whoever wins this game, it probably will be in the college football playoffs, because you've got Georgia, Alabama, Cincinnati, and whatever one of these teams, possibly. If Michigan wins this game and they win, okay, there's obviously two conferences of the Big Ten, but the other conference of the Big Ten most likely is going to have Wisconsin if they win today. Michigan and Ohio State have both proven that they can beat Ohio State, because both teams have beaten Wisconsin this season. Michigan beat them by 20, something like that. So if you can prove, if whoever wins this game, you could argue is the best in the Big Ten and will get a spot in the college football playoffs. I think Michigan, I still am picking against Michigan, but there's a lot at stake. There's college football playoffs, Big Ten championship, and Jim Harbaugh's job is at stake for this game. So I'm really looking forward to it, but there is a lot at stake. You could argue this is the biggest rivalry, but this year it actually matters. If they would have played last year, it wouldn't have mattered. Michigan was bad. The year before when they played, it didn't matter. Michigan already had, I think, 2 losses or something like that. So really at this point, Michigan, they've only had 1 loss. And if they can, it's just, there's a lot at stake here. There really is. So this Ohio State, this is another thing that I think I've touched on so far this show, but this Ohio State team is not as good as it has been in previous years. You look at it in previous years, their defense, for example, their defensive line has had Chase, who is on the Washington football team. I don't know why it is escaping my mind, his first name. They had Nick Bosa. They had tons of different stars. They had cornerbacks like CJ Henderson, or no, not CJ Henderson. What's the other guy? The guy that got drafted by the Detroit Lions. Whatever. So they had very good corners. They've just had a star team. This year, they've already, and usually when these two teams have met, Ohio State has been undefeated. This year, though, Ohio State has been beaten by Oregon. And Oregon basically did it in the trenches. And Ohio State really, their run game's not as good. They don't, like I said, they don't have a Trey Sermon. They've just been weaker. Their defense, you could argue, doesn't have as good of a run game. Again, both teams here are coming off of blowout wins. Michigan beat Maryland by 41 points. Ohio State beat Michigan State by 46 points. So both teams have the momentum coming into this game. But Ohio State, my thing is, if you don't win this year against Ohio State, the stakes are so high, because if you don't win this year against Ohio State, you never will, because Michigan's talent is at its peak. They have 2 top 10 prospects on their defensive line in David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson. Both guys have 10 sacks. Both guys are probably going to break records, and they're very good. So if you don't when the Michigan, you could argue, has the most talent they have had in 5 years, because they have tons of guys. They have a competent quarterback. They have a workhorse running back in Hassan Haskins. They have very good receivers, good offensive line. You could argue if they don't win this game, they have, what's his name? Josh Ross, who is a very good linebacker, stops the run really well. Look him up, Josh Ross. So you could argue if you don't win the Michigan's talent is at its peak, while Ohio State's talent is at a low. And so if you don't win this game, you could argue you will never win it. So that's all I got to say for today. The Michigan-Ohio State game starts in 15 minutes. Go enjoy the rest of your day, guys. I am so pumped. A lot is at stake, Both teams have this is the perfect year to watch them. Both teams are fighting for a college. Number 5th ranked Michigan versus number 2 ranked Ohio State. Both teams have 1 loss. This is going to be a huge game. I am looking forward to it. I hope you guys are too. I'll probably be back this week with a very special guest. I think his name is Jake. Hold on. I'm looking it up here. His name is Jake. Yes, so Jake Boakin or something like that. Hold on. Looking it up. Yes, his name is Jake, and he's a Rams fan, so he has like 8,000 fans. His name is, I believe his name is Jake Boakin. He's a Rams fan. Anyways, he has 8,000 followers on YouTube. So I will be back next week talking about the Rams and the 49ers with him. Don't miss that one out. And I might do a post-game show. I mean, if this game is good, the one thing that I wish is that if Michigan loses, at least lose in dignity. Like the previous years, they've lost and they've been super bad. But at least if Michigan loses, could they please lose by like a few points in overtime or something? Or like make it a good game, please. That's all I'm saying. Make it a good game. I predict though at the end of the day, it's going to be close. Ohio State beats them 35-27. I'll see you guys later. That's my prediction. Peace out.